I want you to picture this for a moment. A classroom where two students are sitting side by side. Same assignment, same instructions, same deadline. On paper, it looks fair. But one student goes home to quiet space, internet access, and support. The other goes home to uncertainty, responsibilities, or an environment where studying isn't guaranteed. Now let me ask you this. Are those two students really starting from the same place? Because this is where education often gets it wrong. We confuse sameness with fairness, and they are not the same thing. Hi, I'm Jocelyn Brooks, and welcome to Ignite Futures Glow Forward with Jocelyn, the podcast where I turn real experiences in education, leadership, and personal growth into actionable insight. This conversation is rooted in my work as an educator, administrator, academic mentor, and social worker. And today, I'm talking about something that sits at the core of all of that. True educational equity. Not the buzzword, not the policy phrase, but the lived daily reality of what students actually need to thrive. And I want to anchor this entire conversation with one truth. Equity is responsiveness, not sameness. Let's be clear. Equality says everyone gets the same thing. Equity says everyone gets what they need to succeed. And in education, that distinction changes everything. Because when we apply sameness to unequal needs, we don't create fairness. We create hidden barriers. I've seen this repeatedly in schools. Identical assignments, identical deadlines, identical expectations, but vastly different levels of access and support. And what gets labeled as student failure is often actually something called system misalignment. As an administrator, I've had to sit in those decision-making moments where policy meets reality. Two students submit incomplete work. The easy response is uniform. Same consequences, same expectations, same follow-up. But leadership requires a deeper question. That question is, what is actually going on for each student? One student may need structure, accountability, and consistent follow-through. The other may need stabilization, communication, or even emotional support before academic expectations can even land. Same behavior, right? Different root cause, different need. And if we respond the same way to both, we are not supporting growth. We are enforcing compliance. In academic mentoring, this becomes even more personal, right? I've worked with students who are brilliant, but very overwhelmed. Not because they lack ability, but because no one has ever broken success down in a way that feels accessible. So some students need step-by-step scaffolding. Some students need visual modeling. They might even need repeated reinforcement, confidence building, check-ins, structured goal setting. Not because they are less capable, but because access to learning looks different for every student. Equity in mentoring, it means we don't just ask, did you understand it? No, we don't do that. We ask, what do you need in order to understand it? And from my social work perspective, I have to name something very real right now for you all. We cannot separate education from lived experience. Students are not just mere learners. They are whole humans, beings navigating life while trying to learn. You do know that like some students are carrying around trauma. Some are carrying around instability, grief, food insecurity, emotional stress, caregiving responsibilities. And yet, we often expect them to perform as if none of this exists. Equity requires us to pause and recognize sometimes the barrier is not academic, it is human experience. That requires relationship, trust, and trauma-informed practice, not just instruction. This is where we have to be honest. Systems often say, we treat all students fairly, but students experience, I am being treated the same, even though my reality is different. And that gap is where disengagement happens. That is where students begin to feel unseen. That is where potential gets lost, not because it isn't there, but because it isn't assessed correctly. I want to say that the shift happens when we stop asking, how do I apply the same standard to everyone? And start asking, what does access look like for this student? Because equity is not lowering expectations, it is removing barriers so expectations can actually be met. I need you to remember that equity is responsiveness, not sameness. So let's make this actionable. Here are 3 shifts educators and leaders can implement immediately. Number 1, replace uniform responses with inquiry-based responses. I need you to pause and ask, what is this student actually needing right now? Number 2, build flexible pathways to success. Same goal, different routes. Not every student gets there the same way. And lastly, prioritize relationship before correction. Connection reveals context. Context informs support. Because equity is not a policy. It is definitely a practice. So I want to leave you with this question. Where in your practice are you applying sameness? When equity is what is actually needed? True educational equity is not about treating all students the same. It's about ensuring every student has what they specifically need to thrive in this world and to thrive in your classrooms, in your schools. And when we operate from that lens, we don't just manage classrooms. We don't just enforce systems. We unlock potential, we change trajectories, and we damn sure shape futures. My book series, From Stuck to Spark, is available now on Amazon, created to help move from stagnation into clarity, confidence, and forward momentum. And my ongoing work through Seasons of Growth, which is part of that series, Rediscovering Yourself Through Life's Transitions, continues that journey of navigating change and becoming. Keep glowing, keep growing. Because equity is not sameness. It is seeing people clearly enough to support them fully. Let's grow together, let's glow forward, and let's ignite what's next together.